So we're excited. This is the first of our 12-month webinar series. You know, we do a great webinar once a month, and this was one of the most registered for webinars. We're really excited to welcome Rebecca Shirley and Laurie Rowe, and I will let Laurie introduce herself first.
Hi, I'm happy to be here. I'm Laurie Rowe, and I have Laurie Rowe Communications, which is a boutique PR firm. We specialize in working with small to medium-sized destinations and communities. I started my career about 25 years ago, probably a little more, but I'll say 25, and have mostly worked in smaller towns. And I worked for the state of Georgia, where I was able to work within many small towns. And one of the things that I learned early on was the power of the media, and especially if you have a small budget, if you get some coverage by Southern Living is a great example, or someone like that, it is just invaluable, really. So that's one of the things that I love to do, is to work with you guys to help you find your stories and get the story and help you learn how to get that story out.
Hi, I'm Rebecca Shirley, the director of the Dahlonega Main Street program. I started with the city of Dahlonega about 9 years ago. During that time, I've been handling the marketing and promotion efforts for our Main Street program. This past June, Joel Cordell, who many of you know, he retired, and I was promoted to the director position. Also in 2016, we were recognized as a Great American Main Street Award, of which Laurie really helped us to draft our story and share our story, you know, nationwide. So here to just describe that process a little bit with y'all and share some tips.
There you go. So Beck and I are going to take turns kind of going through the presentation, and one of the things that I really want you to think throughout this is often being in your community all the time, you can think that what you have is commonplace or not of specific interest, but this is really, hopefully we're going to get you to look at things differently, because the media wants and needs content, and so I think that you have things that they're very interested in. So we're going to take you through some of the tips about how to determine what it is that you want to get what messaging you want to get out, how to do it. Becca's going to go through her Dahlonega case study, so I think that will help give you some great examples. One of the main things I want you to think of throughout this is that you have a plan in place from beginning to end and your goals in mind. Many times, especially when you're dealing with a board or a city council or someone, you'll hear, I want PR, we need to get PR, but really, why do you want to do that? And this is just a great explanation. Publicity is an objective third-party opinion, and it carries more credibility than a lot of paid advertising. So, of course, now, as opposed to just having newspapers or magazines, we have one opportunity with a lot of great bloggers to be able to get even more third-party opinions out there. So this is a way to get the news or the press to be able to carry positive stories about your destination or product. And publicity is also media relations, and you really need to be able to establish those good relationships with the media, and they'll come back to you again and again. Like I said earlier, everybody does have a compelling story, something you may think is not of really great interest. I can come to your community and say, oh my gosh, that is so interesting. One of the best things I'd love to hear journalists say when they come to a community is, who knew? So there are all kinds of things that you probably have that would make them say, you know, who knew? There are business publications such as, you know, Georgia Trend, and newspapers that you can get your messaging out through that with awards and recognition. Preserving history and architecture is wonderful, but not only is it about the preservation, it is also a human interest or lifestyle story. A quick example is we were working with Macon, Georgia, and one of the projects that we had was to do PR for a big event that was coming up, and the musicians with Mercer University had bought this wonderful building, and it was a really international story, and so we were pitching it, and Garden and Gun was interested, but they didn't do the story at all on the event, but on the house itself. So we had to stop and then find all, you know, the information about the house and you have to be able to pivot like that. But it was a really great story, and because it had a connection to the Allman Brothers, it was like their top blog post of the year. So that's an example of that. Growing businesses, all of these things are story ideas. Festivals and events are always great for the media. You can always do well. That's just something that is good for the readership of publications, blogs, things like that. Did you want to add anything to that? So I'm going to run through some tips and resources and kind of guide you through what you need to do to get your plan in place and to be able to reach out to the media. Something that I think is very important now, and it's actually kind of difficult, is to write in a very concise yet compelling format. It's easy sometimes to write 2 pages about what you're doing, but if you want to put it into 50 words, that's a lot harder to do. So you really need to work on that to get your message out. When you are pitching something or you want to catch the information of the journalist, they get hundreds of pitches every day. And if you put yourself in their shoes, they don't know who you are or where you are, so you've got to get those things into the message immediately. Your storyline or your subject line in your email needs to be about where you are, who you are, and you kind of want to make sure that you use words that describe whatever it is that you're pitching, as opposed to very general language, such as I have up here, nestled in the beautiful, we got 12 million hits. I mean, these aren't bad words, but it's used so often that you want to make sure if you're using nestled in the beautiful, you don't just say Blue Ridge Mountains, because there are a lot of great places nestled in the beautiful Blue Ridge Mountains. So those are just some examples of some things that to get you started thinking that you really do have to put yourself in their position, that they don't know who you are, where you are, or why they should write about you. These days, we're also very fortunate that we're able to get things published almost immediately with digital and online publications. Many magazines, again, I'll say like Southern Living or Garden and Gun, it can take a year to get your story out there because they need to come in and do the photography, and then it's got to be in their, in their system for publication. But now, a lot of things, even with Garden and Gun or some of the bigger publications, if you have your information to them in the correct format with the correct information, and it's easy for them to publish, you can get something published almost right away and almost immediately. But you do need to make sure, again, that you have the information they need and that it's written in a style that they can publish. They may only have to tweak it a little bit if you give it to them this way, and they love you when you do that because you're a great resource. So AP Style is Associated Press, and there is a website, apstylebook.com. It's on the slide here, and that is when you're looking at newspapers, especially. That's the format in which many things are published. So these are just some style tips about things that you need to include in your release or in your pitch to journalists, and this will give you a great advantage on getting things published. These are some tips, and these are the key things that we hear from journalists all the time. And that is to give them what they ask for, nothing more, nothing less. Because we're all so busy and we just don't have time to stop and do the research for them sometimes, it's probably easy to miss out on getting something published for them. But if a journalist contacts you and they are looking, whether it's an event or information on some of your merchants or a chef or anything like that, if you just send them a couple of websites and they have to stop and do all of the research themselves, then they're probably not going to take the time to do that. So just make sure that you take the time when you can to give them exactly what they are asking for. And again, as succinctly as you're able to do that. And timely. I know that journalists are often saying, I need this by the end of the day. I need this by the end of the day tomorrow. And that's because you know, a lot of these journalists have to be out and they're on deadlines, and it's not that they're trying to be difficult, it's just that they're just on deadline and they just have to have it. So when you're looking to do a media relations program, keep that in mind, because you have to be timely. And if you're prepared, then it's easy to be timely. I love this because if you'll look at blogs and magazines and newspapers, right now you'll see a lot of top 10, the best of, and so it is a great way for you to position whatever it is in your community that you're trying to promote. We work with Blue Ridge, Georgia a lot, and much of what we do for them is a list, the scenery for the perfect selfie in Blue Ridge, Georgia, and so we're able to get, I think we have 5 in this release. And if you just really look and do your research, you'll see that there are a lot of these. It's wonderful. We work with some communities where because culinary is hot, we want to give them the top dining spots and top restaurants. But you run into politically, I can't promote one over the other. So we try to come up with a theme, maybe it's the best cocktail or something like that, so that you have a reason to group maybe 5 or more together. But you can always then link to everybody else and say for a complete list of the restaurants, so that you make sure you're not only promoting a few. But this is a wonderful way to be able to pitch to journalists, and if it's written well, then they may just cut and paste actually what you write into their publication. Here's a fun pitch example that we did. It's a few years ago for the Vidalia Onion Festival, and what we'll do, instead of, you don't want to send mass emails out because then they don't feel like they're getting anything unique. They're getting the same thing everybody else is. So what you can do is write an email addressed specifically to an editor or a journalist, and you just want to tell them what it is that you're promoting, where it is. So like this, it's an April event close to Atlanta. Regionally, it's close to Atlanta. If you're in the state, you're like, well, it's not just next to Atlanta. But if you're sending it to somebody a few states away, then it is. And it's kind of fun because they talk about having the whole family crying for more. And so that's the little pitch. This is what we're trying to promote to you. We have high-resolution images, which that's 300 DPI or more, and that's what is necessary if they're going to have it published in a magazine or newspaper. So we just do a quick little email directly to the journalist, and then cut and paste the information or your pitch or your release into the email. So if they are interested, then it's very easy for them to scroll down and see what it is. And then if you have more information, you can put a link to the website or for further information so that they can do more research if they want to. Photography is very key now. If you do any research and look at, again, whether it's magazines or newspapers or blogs, it's probably 50% or more images and less content and writing, where 10 years ago or less even, you could look at a magazine and you could have, 4 pages of written content, maybe 1,200 words or 3,000 words and a few photographs. Now you'll have 5 pages of photographs and maybe 500 words. So it's very, very important that you have photography to be able to offer very easily to journalists and the media that are interested in doing. You're just helping them to write your story and to publish it when you do that. In fact, if a journalist is looking at a story idea and talking to several different entities, you have great photography, you're going to get the story as opposed to somebody else that may not. So these are just some of the tips that we've learned after working with journalists for a long time. Often, especially if you're in a beautiful historic area, you have pictures of buildings, and the buildings are interesting, but there's no people in it. And so they really want active shots with people in them. That makes the building shots unique and identifiable. You can see what they're doing. Throughout this, you'll see you really need to do your homework and see if you're doing a story about shopping, then look at a lot of different magazines and how are they presenting those stories. Look at, if you think that, again, Southern Living or Garden and Gun, those aren't the only ones, but they're some of the top great Southern publications. If you want your story to be in that, then look at the magazine and see what sections they have that feature those types of things, and then match your pitch and your pictures to that style. So it takes a bit of homework to do these things, but it will really pay off.
I was going to add, Laurie, that one of the ways we have gotten more pictures to use is we've done social media campaigns and just asked local photographers and to submit images, and it ends up promoting them as well, because we'll do, you know, the most likes or whatever. I mean, you can create a campaign in whatever way, but then you're developing relationships with local photographers who are out at your special events, or have working relations with businesses around your town, and then you can reach out to them directly for pictures, because, you know, to learn to take pictures is a whole nother level of practice, and so to cultivate those local relationships has been helpful for us. And then it also keeps your photos more current, because photographers are out taking pictures regularly versus, you know, you going back in your database from something you had random 5 years ago or whatever.
Right.
So.
That's perfect.
And social media has been very helpful for us in local photography campaigns.
I often have a question about waivers and how you get pictures and, you know, of people. It is a good idea, and you can find waivers on, you can Google it and find, you know, waivers in different language for that, for photography. And if you're going to be, especially at an event and you want pictures of someone, then you can just say, this is what we're doing and this is how we're going to use these photos. Would you mind if we take your picture? And most people will say, okay. So if you're going to show their faces, then you do want to get the waiver signed. And I am not a lawyer, and I'm also not a photographer, but if you're in, you have a big event and you're not really focusing on people, I think you're okay usually not to necessarily try to track everybody down and get a waiver. But definitely, if they're going to be identifiable, you need to do that. And unless you actually work with parents and have a specific shoot, it's kind of, you have to be very careful about taking pictures of children. That's just something that I would say, you know, make sure that that you actually have a plan for doing that and have the waiver and work with parents on those things. And always caption the photo and identify what the photo is and give photo credit. Most of the entities we work with are convention and visitors bureaus, and they usually own the rights to the photography. But if you're working with a specific photographer, then you may want to give, you may need to give them credit also.
Well, another thing with the captions that Laurie and I were talking about before, you can really use captions as another way to tell your story. So you never want to just caption a photo like photo 1 and the credit. Like, describe what's happening in that photo is another way to add content or have text and narrative without overwhelming in your press release, if you will.
This is just a sample of where photography is key. I think the Cottage Journal is one of the most beautiful magazines out there right now. And again, you'll see most of it is just beautiful imagery. They do their own photography, but the pictures tell the story more than a lot of the written content does. So that's, again, do your research, look at what type of publication you want to be featured in, see how their format is, if they have regular features, and that's a great way to be able to get their attention and match what you have to them. This is kind of what we've been talking about, to find the right mix, to be able to actually reach your goals of what you want this public relations program to be. You need to set a plan with timelines. For instance, Southern Living magazines that are print magazines, they publish a year in advance at least. However, there are online versions that you can get a story in, you know, a month or two out. So you kind of need to do your research for that to determine when you need to pitch your story, match your story with the media outlets, and seriously, like, the main thing is to do your research and look at all of that, because we'll often have clients that want to be in a specific publication, but their story doesn't really match it. And so that's just very important to be realistic about that. Distributing your press release and your story, it's best to do it on kind of a multi-layered format. When you are working with the media, the best thing you can do, again, go back to the research. When you determine where, these are like my top 10 places that I want to be published in, you need to then, you can look online, look at the magazine, but find out who that writer or who that editor is and send them a personal note. Don't just send them a mass press release. It really matters that they know that you know what they're writing, that what you're sending them is relative content for them. And once you establish that relationship with them, they'll come back time and time again. There are different ways that you can find your distribution list, again, the research, but well, this is if you're going to be looking actually into travel stories, Travel Media Showcase, you can Google that, and that's a marketplace where you can go and sit down and meet journalists face-to-face. If you are outside of Atlanta or outside of Birmingham and you want to be able to get some articles in those places, then you need to contact different chambers of commerce. They're still very, very viable for finding out that kind of information. You know, what do people read in Birmingham? What do they read in this town that you're looking for? Play nice with others always. I think most people do, but regionally, you know, your state people, other communities are often very happy to share contacts with you. And in fact, the media often will share contacts with you. If it's not a story that fits them, they'll give you some different resources. But always create a custom distribution list. That means those that you're going to email directly, and you want to pitch them and tell them, you know, give them an idea of what you have to offer them. But you can also do a larger list where there are many, many newspapers within the state of Georgia, and you're not going to find a specific editor. But you can mail it to their newsroom. So that is a time when you can put it into, say, Constant Contact or MailChimp and send it. If it just says newsroom, then you'll email it that way. So you just have to look at your different tiers of how you're going to pitch something. Oh, and I did have in there, be sure to blind copy if you're sending it out to more than one person. Always blind copy. Nothing is more of a turnoff than seeing you sent something to 80 people or more. And some of the last things I'll say real quick is reporting. We all want to know, you know, an ROI on what we've done. And even if we're not able to get a specific dollar amount, we want to see what the return is. How we measure and what we report is if we're looking at an article that's posted online, then we will look at their site or look at their media kit to find out what their unique monthly views are. And that's what we call a digital media impression, or the unique monthly views. Print magazines and newspapers, we measure print impressions by circulation. Sometimes readership, they'll have that in their media kit, circulation and readership. Circulation is a very specific number, and then readership is more like a pass-along rate, like you may hand it to somebody else to read, so it's a little bit higher than circulation. And then if you want to try to figure out a dollar value, it's kind of an old-fashioned way to do it, but we literally measure in column inches. You measure by inches. You take a ruler and you measure the size of the article. Then you'll look at their media kit or advertising kit and say, if I were buying an ad that is 30 inches and it's $75 per column inch is how they'll have it in the media kit, then it's worth $2,250. So that's how we do that, and it's not always exact, but at least we'll give you a good measurement of what you're doing. You probably all get journalists or bloggers, people that want to come actually visit and maybe asking you for some kind of subsistence while they're there or introductions. Know that it's always fine and expected, if it's a professional media person, that you should be able to ask them for clips or current blog posts, and so that you'll be able to look and see what it is they're writing, what their writing style is, who their audience is. That's really the best way to determine whether it's a fit for what they're asking you to do. It's good to be able to craft a few responses, and I'll be able to send some ideas that that the ladies can post for you to have, but some responses in advance, saying, you know, that we're only allowed to help you with accommodation if you're going to write this specific post, or anyway, there are several ways to do that. But if you're prepared when they reach out to you, then it makes it much easier to tell them yes or no. And that's just also a way to identify whether they're professional or not. If somebody contacts you and they don't want to send you clips and they don't want to give you any information, then you do not need to tell them that you're able to help them with their visit. And these are just some resources. North American Travel Journalists Association, Society of American Travel Writers, PRSA. These are professional associations, so that's going to up the level of the professionalism of the journalists if they are if they are a member of these associations. These are some resources for research, some tools like, of course, Dropbox. Most everybody uses that at this point, but journalists do love, especially if you're giving them some videos or high-resolution images, to be able to share it with Dropbox. We upload all of our reports to clients on Google Drive. Let's see what else is. Google Alerts are perfect for being able to track any mentions of your community, different things. You use Google Alerts.
I love Google Alerts because then it comes to me and I'm not having to seek things out and look for it and, you know, scroll through social media or newspapers. Like it shows up in my inbox.
We use a virtual assistant. I don't know if anybody has used that or not, but we often use a virtual assistant to do project work, but we have one all the time that helps us search for things because, of course, we have multiple clients and it's a big part of what we do. But Upwork.com, the Help by Astrid is who we use, and it's extremely affordable. We started doing that when we needed a lot of data entry, and we didn't have anybody that was able to do it, and it was $8 an hour. So something I've been sitting on for 2 years, she was able to do overnight. So that, if you need some extra help, think about trying to use one of those resources. We take screenshots of every article that's posted, and to be able to do that, you have to take pictures of like maybe a whole long blog post. So there are tools. There are a lot more than this. I use Snagit.com. Some of the other people I work with use PickPick, and y'all may know of others. But if you have an article published online, you do get a link to it, and you can click on it and see it, but it might not be there in a day, or, you know, so that's why we take a photo of everything that's published. And
cool.
Rebecca.
So in 2016, Dahlonega was recognized as a Great American Main Street City. We created a strategic marketing campaign using the tips Laurie's been describing. We're just going to share that with y'all today. Our campaign is obviously based upon this specific award announcement, but the fundamentals of how we built the campaign, it can certainly be complementary for anything that you have in mind. Let's see here, Mary. Cool. Upon receiving the news about the award, we began to create a marketing plan with the goals of extending the interest of the announcement, using the opportunity to promote Dahlonega nationally and internationally, attracting investors and visitors, and then growing business opportunities. We started this planning nearly 6 months in advance to be able to flush out these goals, as well as provide that appropriate lead time that Laurie was mentioning in regards to publications. Basically, the overarching theme of these goals is to use the GAMSA announcement as an opportunity to take our name recognition to the next level and sustain that momentum for as long as possible. In order to achieve these goals, we focused heavily on who we were going to share the story with and how we were going to share it. Chatting with Laurie about everything, and kind of, we have a strong tourism brand already in Dahlonega, so we really wanted to tap into something more business oriented, such as Georgia Trend, or we have the other ones listed there. But we also wanted to increase the presence in the trade publications like a Where to Retire magazine and the other lifestyle things. We had a very extensive distribution list. In this case, we were also able to partner with the National Main Street City, who would handle the national market and more of the niche publications, maybe like Smart Growth America or things of that nature. And then worked with our local chamber and Laurie's office in order to develop, you know, a list for our neighboring cities and counties. Again, kind of similar to what Laurie mentioned before, we didn't have, so the National Main Street Center certainly provided a generic National Main Street, Great American Main Street Award announcement, but we really wanted to set ourselves apart from the other groups being awarded. So we created smaller press releases that certainly had some of the same language related to receiving the Great American Main Street Award, but were specific to living in Dahlonega, visiting Dahlonega, or investing in Dahlonega. Let's see here. So additionally, for each of these markets, we would draft similar narrative to put that we would use in our interviews, to use on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, as well as blog postings on our website. So we really had a comprehensive approach well in advance of the National Main Street Center announcement, which was helpful because then we could kind of continue to tweak the content and really perfect it prior to the announcement being made. And the online portal, so that link, I think when it's posted online, that link will be active, and you can visit that, and it'll be an example of what Laurie's been describing as a place that held our content and held our images. So we all know that time is delicate on our Main Street watch, you know, and day to day we're pushed very thin, and what this allowed us to do, instead of me having to handle individual inquiries or you know, I had this one location that I ensured had our most relevant information, the most up-to-date images. I could drive inquiries to a particular location versus having to draft new content or new emails for each individual person that called or emailed. So we also wanted, as the campaign picked up, we recognized the opportunity to extend the reach of the GAMSA announcement. So we did buy an advertisement in Facebook, I think it was $100 or something, to market the Great American Main Street video. Videos are great because it's really added value to telling your story. And yes, this particular video was professionally done, but technology nowadays allows anyone to create a video. And in fact, it's something that we've began to incorporate just in our day-to-day shopping and dining promotion, highlighting merchants in our social media plan. You know, our intern can make a video in like 30 minutes. It's awesome. We also wanted to ensure, you know, we did daily social media posts with many of the same images that writers would be viewing from our online portal, which is a snippet of the site there in the center. That began to make Dahlonega more recognizable to viewers, fans, and readers, and seeing like our same images in a variety of locations. And we also were very mindful of what other people were saying about us and tried to piggyback on all of that promotion as well, and that allowed us, you know, just sharing these articles from, this is an example from CNN, just from their social media sites, and then we were able to reach their viewers or their readers as well. So this page is a summary of the results from our marketing campaign, and this is based upon the reporting strategies Laurie had described earlier. As you'll see, we had a broad range of success from traditional media to social media, as well as website views. With the traditional media, we were published in at least 15 articles, and this, we haven't updated, and again, it could be more now with the publication dates and things having, maybe we missed something since we created this. Also did an interview with Georgia Public Broadcasting. All of that was an estimated value of $3.8 million, which was definitely above my marketing budget. So we were excited to see that. And we are still waiting for this, the extending the reach, maintaining that momentum. There is another article that's yet to be published in the Where to Retire magazine, so that'll come out sometime this year. So, that's nearly a year after the award announcement, so that's great. Social media, we hear it all the time, but, you should never underestimate social media. Within 2 weeks, we had 300,000 impressions with our GAMSA-related posts. And again, I think we paid $100, but 300,000 impressions is a great return. And whether it was just by luck or because of all of the activity happening with, noting Dahlonega on social media in 2016, we were recognized in these 3 best of competitions, so TripAdvisor, Architectural Digest, and National Geographic. Again, that sharing those and cross-promoting those and everything that we do allowed us to reach that market as well. And then you can see the online press room activities. So these are sessions and page views specific to writers looking for content in regards to the announcement, and that really ties directly up to the number of articles that were published in regards to the announcement.
And I'd like to say this is an annual campaign, so we kicked it off for the award. That was the anchor of the program, and we had a lot of interest immediately, and then for the next 2 or 3 months, then we came into more of the fall and the holiday season, and it fell off a little bit. Now, after the first year, we're going to address it again. We'll start doing a few more pitches and updating information, and I'm sure between now and May, then we'll have more. So that's kind of what we're talking about with the planning and your timeline throughout the year.
So you can see here the campaign results, they really demonstrate it's a perfect example of, I think it's the first or second slide in the beginning of the presentation about using the press to carry your story. And then it's these relationships that go, way above and beyond just your traditional paid advertising message. So, looking back, these are just some lessons that I learned and that Laurie and I have chatted about, and that, just that we're mindful of as we develop other campaigns. Again, this strategic marketing, I think Laurie just mentioned that right now, it just each year you can evaluate, grow upon it, identify, additional things that make your community unique. You've built relationships, so it just starts to really come together. The multiple platforms, so when we were developing the content, we specifically developed complementary content for multiple platforms, and then we had that resource available for us, whether then you had to tweak it to create talking points for your mayor or a local press release or whatever. You had the basic information there and ready, available, and then you could have a quick turnaround time on it. And again, like that online press room and having your content up to date and accessible online. Maybe you have a writer that's sitting in a different time zone or somewhere else, and then they can just access your information easily. Finding the specific details of what you're actually trying to say and not just sharing a long press release was really beneficial for us. It kind of ended up giving us a broad range of interest of a variety of things. Definitely photos, social media, and then the calendars and online tools. We use a social media posting platform called Buffer, and I don't know if it's all free, but it's great because you can plan things in advance, and then you're not spending all your time drafting content. So let's see here. Oh, that was fast.
All right, so now is Q&A time. We're going to pull up, see if we have any questions, see what's going on. Lee, I noticed you've taken a couple notes. Did you have something?
Yeah, I wanted to ask a question because this is something that I hear sometimes. So how's the best way when you want to involve partners like the local CPB, the tourism efforts, when past efforts haven't been successful? Should you start with a small project? Should you try to establish the support of your local government in going with you? Like, I know that there's a lot of times where people are starting fresh and with new people, and things in the past haven't gone the way they wanted. Can you address that somehow, that how we can work with that, make it better?
Well, in Dahlonega, we constantly partner with our chamber, whether it's on downtown specific things or film related things, and it's just continuing to build that relationship. It doesn't ever end. So whether a new staff person comes in or you've known someone for 10 years, I mean, your programs are continuing to evolve, so you have to evolve with it. And I would say in a more confrontational place, certainly like a smaller project for a good win, and a good partnership opportunity that's maybe, I don't know if easy is the right word, but easier to accomplish would be helpful.
I think a theme right now is everything is changing constantly. Mm-hmm. And something that didn't work 5 years ago, it may not be attributed to the people that were involved, or things have just changed so much that sometimes having someone outside your community come in, whether you hire them or you just bring somebody in from another community or Main Street that's done something fun, kind of like we're talking about here, mm-hmm. It's a way to diffuse sometimes some of the challenges that you can have locally, and maybe start getting some new ideas and get everybody on board. That's kind of a way I've seen some communities do it, and it's working well.
That's great. I think that's helpful advice.
We've had a couple people ask if we will share this presentation. Just want to reassure you, we will share this presentation. We'll upload it to our website as well as email it out as part of our weekly email next week. So no worries. I will make sure that you guys get copies of it. Our next question is, would you suggest hiring a publicist to help implement a campaign?
Well, it really helped. It helped us in Dahlonega because, again, whether it's something small or something large, I think when we're in it day to day and in the weeds, it's hard at times to see the bigger picture and the bigger story. Which there again, kind of what Laurie was saying before, for building relationships or seeing and understanding things happening in your community from a higher level, having an outside perspective is very helpful. Secondly, it was very helpful for us in regards to flushing out like our distribution list, and us what we thought would be a good fit, well, we didn't know, and having some other, the expertise of like a marketing campaign or a publicist, it was very helpful in regards to the distribution of things as well.
Well, one of the things I would say is if you're looking to do that, be sure to talk to other communities that have done this, or your state offices for references, and you don't have to spend $30,000 a year, I guess is what I'm saying. Just make sure that you're able to do your research that way, because there are a lot of resources for outside publicists or PR firms or individual consultants that can help you, and you don't have to spend $30,000 or more. You can, but you don't have to.
Yeah, for the Great American Main Street, we received notice that we were being awarded this after our budget had been set. So we didn't have a budget. So, it was definitely a great investment and a great return on that.
Someone was asking, where's a good place to obtain a list of direct media contacts? And I'm guessing they're thinking more of like a broader scale, like if there's a place to go for magazines or tourism or,
There's not really one good central list that I know of. In the past, I know that we used to buy lists. We actually invest in something called Meltwater Media Intelligence, but and so we can create our own list by going on that. It's about anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 a year to invest in that, but it's all current contacts. We can look for any media outlet throughout the world. But again, kind of going back to doing your research, there's so many online tools now that you can look. There are different associations for newspapers and for magazines, and there are some different resources that you can look, just Google it and look like that. You can create your own list that way. And again, talk to other people, and a lot of times your state associations, your state offices, regional offices, they already have lists. So I think that that's probably the best way to go.
And I'm sure you would say, like, even on a local level, when you look and are able to put together a media list, having an established relationship with those entities that you're reaching out to probably goes a long way as far as getting your information out there and communicating.
Absolutely, it does.
Absolutely. Let me see. I know when I was listening, I was like, so many good questions and thoughts running through my mind, and I love the point that you made about BCCing somebody, because I think that was a really great point. And I don't see necessarily any other questions.
I have one more thing.
Oh, yes, absolutely.
I heard this yesterday from some journalists. Make sure you have your social media handles on your website. Or any of your information, because they will, they'll tag you, they'll share the information, and it's hard, again, it's just got to be immediately available, but be sure that you have all of that information up to date and available for them.
I remember the other question I wanted to ask. So I know for people who are a one-man show who may not have the support or even the resources necessary to be able to bring in somebody, they have to start somewhere. Is there a better place for them to start and put their advertising? Like if, they had a small budget and it's like, well, if you had to put it into print or into digital and social media, or, do you have any recommendations as far as that? Like,
from my perspective, I think you need a mix. I don't think you need to put it all in advertising or all in digital, all in print or all in digital or all in PR. If you can come up with kind of a good mix for that, and since you actually run your budget,
Well, we definitely do a mix, and it depends. You have to, again, think about your end goal, and, how we market on Facebook is different than how, what we communicate and what we share when we're trying to, be included in a story in a print magazine. But identifying the goal in advance, I think, is key. Social media is certainly very affordable. It's hard to not recognize that. But the print and the story and the content, especially for like high quality magazines, is you can't compare to that. It's so a mix, because they're not comparable, if you will. Yeah.
And I'm assuming like demographics and understand, like you were talking about the end game in mind, knowing what you want from it, but also knowing kind of who you're targeting, because I'm assuming like who you're trying to reach will kind of really depend where you focus your energy and efforts as well.
Exactly. We always start with communities and start with those questions. You know, who is your market? Who are you trying to reach? Who are your demographics? You know, what geographically as well as age groups and those things, so that it's just like doing any marketing plan. If you're looking at PR, you need to do the same thing. Who are you trying to reach, and what are going to be the best outlets and to be able to reach them.
Do you have any recommendations for managers who may have a city or the chamber they're working with, and they have somebody in that organization that is handling media, communications, press, and maybe they're kind of tight-fisted with it. They want everything to run through them, and so that can be challenging, whereas you're trying to get out information and constantly be in communication, but a lot of times it might have to flow through them. Is there any recommendations for how to kind of tackle that?
I feel like preparation is the key again. When we have worked with some entities, and like we worked with some state agencies in Florida, and they have to be very tight. I mean, they have to be. They're looking at this. So we would go in and make sure that all the content that we're going to distribute and pitch is pre-approved by them, and then they let us run with it. But they did need to see, and I understand that they needed to see what we were doing, and our focus was tourism, and they aren't tourism experts, and they were fine with that. They just wanted to make sure that they saw what was going to be out
Making
there.
sure you build in enough time to
Yes.
kind of do that. So
yeah.
Well, and I think with whether your tourism is in-house with your Main Street office or in a different entity, like in Dahlonega, our tourism director is with our Chamber of Commerce. At the end of the day, our message is complementary, and so to build that relationship, to then work together, has been very helpful for us. That maybe they market Dahlonega, Lumpkin County as a whole, but downtown is the entry-exit point of Dahlonega, Lumpkin County. So without, some collaborative efforts, I think that their message as well as ours misses, a big piece of this story.
absolutely. Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining us today.
Great.
This is
Thank you.
awesome. So great. Lots of good information and lots of practical application as well. If you guys don't mind, I'll make sure to share your contact information. That way, if anybody has any follow-up questions, they can reach out to you.
We have it on there too, so at the end of the slide.
Sorry, you want to click one more? There we go. This is Laurie and Rebecca's contact information, and I'm going to direct people directly to you, Becca, if they want to talk more in depth about, your budget and stuff like that for what you did for GAMSA advertising and things like that. So thank you guys for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.